Hello, it's May 2022, and I'm going to be talking about another sensitive topic in this video. The previous sensitive topic video that I talked about was about human trafficking or sex trafficking, and in that video I also added my personal first-hand knowledge and experience of this from actually a couple different perspectives. And in this video I'm going to be talking about the murdering of babies via abortion. And again, I'm going to be using my own first-hand perspectives on this topic. Now, over the past couple of years, I've mentioned this a little bit more frequent, and I've had people comment saying, I should talk about this more. And just recently, I had posted a comment to another channel's video on this topic, and someone asked or suggested that I should write a book and tell the story. I really don't know what more I can say about this. It is what it is type of thing. But I will say that in my first book, around 2010, I did briefly mention it before it was confirmed. And then in 2020, when it was confirmed to me, I did mention it, highlighted it in a couple of videos anyway. And I haven't really talked about much about the topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dedicate this video specifically to this topic and specifically to my own personal experience with this. Now in 2020, it was actually the month before, in December of 2019, someone had sent me an email. Someone I don't talk to hardly on a regular basis sent me an email around the holiday season, and they had said something in the email, which I assume they must have assumed that I knew about it. So I had questioned what was written, and again they continued along the narrative that they thought I knew. So I had found a way to contact my mother, and after 21 years at the time, in 2020, and I want to hear from her if it was true or not. And it was true. Apparently, I was born dead for 45 minutes, and it took them that long to resuscitate me, which answers the question why my birth date was written incorrectly. There's some other anomalies with it, but that one always stuck out to me. So I guess I came to life just after midnight the next day. And this was in a time in the late 60s where there was a lot of coat hanger type of abortions. And I do recall adults, when I was a little kid, talking about this and hearing about using coat hangers. I was too young to really understand what they were talking about, but I do distinctly recall, and I can still picture it in my head. They were sitting at the kitchen table, and I was in the living room, the TV. I was looking at the TV, and they were sitting there talking about it pretty nonchalantly. And I know my mother had other abortions, and all this could actually explain a lot of her mental illnesses. And I'm saying that respectfully, because what a lot of people don't realize is, whether it be done at home or in a professional setting, women who have abortions later on in life, if not right away, suffer mental illnesses from that. Because you have to think that what you're doing is you're going against nature. A mother's instinct, a normal woman, when she's pregnant, she wants to protect that baby and eventually give birth and raise the child and protect that child with everything that they have. that's a good mother. And I don't think there's one person that can argue that. Well, I'm sure there are, but again, that's a different topic. So in the late 60s, this is what I survived. And I don't really know what more to say about that other than looking at my life and the hardships that were imposed on me since childhood. And I've shared this, as I said in this other video, and other things as well. It's a lot of physical abuse, psychological abuse, and having to live through all that. And I remember when I first mentioned this in 2020 in a video, I said that I would like to find that doctor and kick him in the ass for bringing me into this world. Because the life that I've lived in throughout my life to now, look at how I'm living now, how I ended up. I don't know what more I can say. And living with the horrors with my mother would have been better off if I didn't have to endure all that. However, I'm here. So, and it's not the first time that I died. So keep in mind, I died, I guess, before I was born, or at birth, or however you want to describe it. I also drowned twice, once when I was around 5 years old and once when I was around 12 years old. And the second time that I died by drowning had a very unique, a standout experience. And I just want to stop here for a moment. A lot of people say, well, that's near death because death is permanent. No. There's death experiences, there's near-death experiences, and then there's coming close to death experiences. They're three different things. I'm just going to interject here an example of a near-death experience and close-to-death experience. So a near-death experience, from my first-hand experiences, would be surviving being deliberately poisoned for an insurance trust fund. And I was literally in the hospital, apparently on my deathbed, and the doctors were ready to sign me off. And it was actually my mother and her husband that were behind all that. Now, avoiding death, going back to when I was a child, for example, would be my getting out of a vehicle at the last second as everyone was pulling away and going into another vehicle, which was heading in another direction that we were going. Moments before, the vehicle that I was supposed to be in ended up in a 10-foot ditch, and the transmission and engine were all pushed back through the passenger seat where I would have been sitting. So there's two examples of what I'm talking about. Okay? So I've died 3 times, and I've had near-death experiences, which are different. In order to understand what I'm saying, you have to experience the differences. And I've come close to death, what I would also call avoiding death. I think I mentioned that and used that descriptive in my first book. So coming into this world, surviving abortion, and realizing, looking back at my life and how I ended up by no fault of mine, which ties into the video that I mentioned at the beginning on the sensitive topic of human trafficking. And where I am now in life is because of my efforts to whistleblow and expose first-hand knowledge of the sex trafficking, the sexual abuse of these vulnerable women. And I'm not saying that my whole life has been terrible. I mean, I've had high moments, like just top of the world moments. I've practiced law as agent, had a placement in office prosecuting, had the status of a peace officer. I've partied with, literally partied with, on a personal level, with world leaders and those people behind them. It was during this time I learned things that most people deem as conspiracies, but I digress. So I've had, and I've accomplished a lot in my life, whether it be through my training, whether it be through freestyle fighting, bodybuilding, whatever. So I have accomplished a lot. But at the same time, it's like when my life was on top, it was on top. But when it hits rock bottom, like where I am now, it's brutal. But really the focus is my younger years as a child and everything that I had to endure. With, for example, my mother used to make me kneel on rock salt for hours. Things like that. I mean, that's not even the beginning. So, and what's interesting is I've always all my life been against abortion, the murdering of babies. Call it as it is. Don't put a fancy name to it. It's murdering of babies. I've always been against it, but when it was confirmed in 2020, okay, I'm still against it. And there's a lot of people, these people who support it, maybe they're the ones that should step up and practice what they preach. Now, should all mothers be allowed to have keep their child once the child is born? Probably not. That's just not the mother. I mean, you have to look at the whole family structure. There's a mother and a father, right? Anyway, I just simply want to address this real quick. Probably I've rambled on a little bit too long, but there's really not much more I can say about it. It happened, and here I am today. So take what you will from this video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, when is it going to get easier? When you die.